Okay, so starting out with my supplies, I've got my base square here, my tiny yellow square, and I'm just going to start out with 2 pieces of scrap paper. Now, I'm trying to decide how I want to make sure that this is a symmetrical design. Remember, the same on both sides. So I'm going to go ahead and fold my square in half so that I have 4 sides to my square, and that way I know each square inside of my square should be the same. So each of those tiny squares that I created from my fold should have the same things on each side. So I'm going to start with the center and glue down a diamond right in the middle. When I use my glue, I'm painting it on very carefully, making sure the full shape is covered in glue, but not too much glue to where I have daubs of glue mountains that are going to spill out of the edges after I glue it on. So now from here, I'm just going to cut out some corners for the edges of each shape that I have made here and glue those down first. If I want to draw out my design on a piece of free draw paper and kind of play with it before I start cutting and gluing, that would be a really great idea too. Or you can just start going for it and see what happens. And if there's something you don't like, you can always glue something else right on top of it, and it'll be okay. So I'm gluing down these edges. And now I'm going to take a pause with my pattern paper and start to glue down some other shapes and lines with a different color. So I'm going to sit my glue brush down where it's not going to get stuck to the table and cut out some new shapes and lines from a new piece of paper. Now, I wouldn't start with too much at your table because you're going to get a mess. It's going to be really crowded and you're not going to have a lot of working space. So just start with maybe 2 or 3 pieces of scrap paper. And if you need another color, you can always go back to the scrap bin. But anything that I am done with, that is still a big chunk of paper, I need to make sure I put it back in the scrap bin because somebody else could use it for their shapes as well. So I kind of changed my mind on the orange and put that back in the scrap bin and got a red piece of scrap paper. Notice this is not a full sheet of paper, and I can get plenty of lines and shapes out of this small piece. So make sure you're always returning pieces you're not using to the scrap bins. So I'm going to cut these in half and add them to each side of my quilt square. And adding these diamonds in using a folded paper technique to make sure the diamonds are symmetrical on each side and gluing them down as well. Now, I could keep going with different cuts of paper and shapes all day. I could do so many awesome shapes and colors, but I'm going to do this quickly so we have lots of working time and kind of stop here. Now, even though I'm stopping, it kind of looks like it needs a little something else, right? So I can go in with a Sharpie or maybe a marker and add in just a few small details like dots or lines or smaller intricate shapes that I couldn't get cut out of paper, and then I'm done.